Today on The Rare Advisor, we're going to talk about public seminars, specifically the follow-up process. Now, many advisors have used public seminars to attract new client relationships for years, but many miss out on possible wins today and in the future by not having a clear, well-defined follow-up process that follows these best practices.
This is The Rare Advisor, a show for financial advisors who want to build and grow their practice through the use of a business model supercharged by recurring and repeatable events. The Rare Advisor is brought to you by the Advisor Protocol Consulting Team at USA Financial.
Welcome to The Rare Advisor. I'm Aaron Grady, and with me today is my good friend, Alan Oehrlein. Today, we want to take a few moments to talk about something that's been kind of very topical when it comes to some of the coaching conversations we've had. And it's probably some of the time of year, but it never goes out of style. The idea around seminar best practices, but more specifically, what do you do as part of the follow-up process? Advisors invest a lot of money, time, energy, and resources in trying to acquire new client relationships. And you do all the work, all the setup, all the pre-work, you get through the event itself, and then you get down to the 10-yard line. And it's crazy how many times missing some little parts of the process, how you can fumble the snap and miss out on opportunities to increase your results. And so today, that's really where we want to focus. And so I've asked Alan to be part of this conversation. He deals with this quite a bit. And so this conversation that came up with a couple of advisors we were talking to the other day. And so Alan, where I'd like to start is, so let's talk about seminar best practices, specifically the follow-up process. And, I know there's kind of some nuances here. There's, people that attend the seminar. There's people that attend and sign up. There's people who attend but don't sign up. There's people who don't show up at all. Let's just talk about best practices when it comes to people who attend the event, and let's go from there. So what would be, just in general, what are some of the best practices that an advisor should think about when it comes to doing these public events?
Sure. So first and foremost, we want to follow up quickly, typically within 24 to 48 hours of the event. In other words, we want to strike while the iron's hot. There's a principle called the law of diminishing intent, where the further away you get from the event, the less likely the person is to take action and follow up. So again, strike while the iron's hot. Usually you want to do this by sending a personalized email in conjunction with a personalized call. And this is just a brief conversation around, thanks for attending, including a brief recap of some of the key points that you covered during the seminar. And then, of course, offering to discuss how these topics can apply to their own personal financial needs. Second off, we want to definitely personalize the communication. So definitely reference the questions they asked, or if they did show interest in a particular topic, to reference that during that phone call or conversation. Always use their name, always be specific about details, just to show that you were also paying attention during that seminar as well. Next up, we want to make sure that we're consistently offering value through the form of helpful resources, white papers, checklists, any sort of value adds that you provided during the seminar to continue to draw attention to that. Remember, we're trying to offer value and overall stewardship. It's not a sales pitch by any means. Next up, we want to offer multiple touch points. So I alluded to this a second ago with an email and a phone call. Very important to do that. Many advisors also enjoy sending a personal touch in a handwritten card or a thank you note, just to, again, thank them for attending the event. And then lastly, I think to round out the best practices, it's around creating a sense of urgency and also showing the next steps. Very important to show that you not only have a process in most of the things that you do within your business, but especially in this component as well. You want to give them a clear reason to act now and create some sort of sense of urgency. But you want to convey that you're a busy professional and you've got a full schedule. It's not like you're just waiting around for them to call to book that meeting. You set aside a specific amount of time for these types of meetings that are follow-ups from the seminar event. And then, of course, you always schedule the next event at the end of the conversation to kind of keep that momentum going. So that's kind of the 5 typical best practices that I like to start out with when I'm talking to advisors following up a seminar or event.
I love the thought process, and you kind of wove the feeling in there, and you started off this conversation. One of the tenets of what we speak to advisors about is kind of the shift in mentality from salesmanship to stewardship. The idea of attract but don't chase, and I know there's a fine line there as we talk over how to do this and how to attract clients. There's a tendency to want to chase a little bit. And I think, it's through some of the best practices you're talking about, there's a way to be attractive and get people, as the old adage goes, get the fish to jump in the boat, as opposed to,
right.
Kind of the smell of desperation. Let's take a step back. So, we were talking about, some of the best practices you were talking about is, okay, someone has, gone to the event, they've engaged, and now they want to maybe come to an appointment, or they want to take the next step. Some of your best practices spoke of that. So some of the questions that always come up, and I was at an event just recently down in Florida with a group of advisors, and we were doing kind of a roundtable discussion about these type of public events. And it was kind of a mixed conversation, both of public seminars to attract new clients, but also things to engage with your existing clients. But specifically around the public events, there was kind of a split in the room around a couple of topics. And so I want to get your opinion on this. One of which was, when does the follow-up process actually start? And I know this is a bit of a trick question, but so when does the follow-up process actually begin in your mind?
Sure. Great question. In my mind, it starts right away. As I alluded to in the first best practice, you want to strike while the iron's hot. So it's a 24-hour follow-up. Sometimes it ends up being 24 to 48, depending on kind of the scheduling and how the times land. But usually within that 24-hour grace period, you want to reach out to them, again, thank them for coming to the event. Also send a follow-up email as well, just to, again, make your presence felt, appreciate their attendance, and taking time out of their busy day to attend the event, to learn a little bit more. And then, of course, to offer up your additional services to see if there is potential for wanting to set up some sort of meeting to discuss.
Well, and I set you up a bit there on that question too. What was interesting in this conversation is, and everything you said is 100% accurate and right on point. What was interesting was part of this conversation is there's a nuanced element of it where actually you're right. It starts immediately. But quite frankly, it even starts directly in the actual meeting itself.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was actually one of the points of contention that some of the advisors were talking about. Well, they had kind of delineated in their mind that, well, the follow-up process starts after everything is said and done and you've left the meeting and we're doing something else. But the other part of the room was kind of like, well, wait a second. No, it's actually starts in the room. It starts actually as part of the actual presentation. And one of those conversations led itself to, do you use a self-evaluation form, or do you use hey, I need to get this form filled out for the IRS to show how many people are in the room,
Right.
Something to engage the person in the meeting to kind of trigger that next step. I mean, part of the messaging is part of that, right? So the closing remarks should lend to what are the next steps? How do I, what's going to happen as part of the follow-up and kind of start that process. But what do you see from your side as far as, what are people using as to start that follow-up process in the actual meeting?
Sure. No, that's a great question. The highest likelihood of you being able to nail down an appointment or a meeting with the prospects is going to take place in the meeting. I think part of the reason that you talked about some of the follow-ups is it's a missed opportunity for many advisors that often kind of put it by the wayside or just assume if the client is interested that they're going to automatically reach out or respond via email. But while you're in the meeting, again, this is the prime time to display that call of action, to let them know, hey, there is a next step to this. If you like what you're seeing here, if any of these topics give you particular interest and maybe has an effect on your personal financial situation, we want you to act now. So many advisors will use either a personal feedback form, a self-evaluation and process form, so that they can be engaged in the meeting and sort of follow along as you hit certain topics. They can circle areas that are of importance to them and notate that as they select maybe a particular meeting time that you've laid out on that form as well. That's another thing to remember, is that as you list out these meeting times, you want to put specific dates and times on there and not make it general and leave it up to interpretation, saying just write down the days that usually work best for you and the times that work best for you. You want to come across as a skilled professional that has a full schedule. So put down specific time, put down specific dates, and reiterate to the group that you've set aside this particular chunk of time specifically for these individuals in attendance. Other advisors like to have if available, an assistant or someone from their office in the room available to book appointments on the fly, either during a break or as they're exiting the room at the conclusion of the seminar. So both I've seen have done with great success. All kind of depends on really what's going to work best for your particular office.
So either have them check a box and then you circle back afterwards to confirm that meeting time, or have someone, your assistant or someone in the room, have them with your calendar start actually signing people up on the spot. Is that accurate? Was that fair?
Yes, absolutely. Those are the kind of the best practices we've seen from advisors having the most success in the highest ratio.
And that's good, because one of the conversations that we were having was there were some advisors who were like, you really basically want person just to acknowledge that they're interested. Just check the box that says you're interested, and we'll circle back to call to get you on the calendar. So you're saying best practice is actually have some defined times for them to pick from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't want to leave it general or kind of up in the air, because then you find yourself in a back and forth. Well, this time it worked for me, but maybe not this time. This one I said works best most of the time. But again, take a lot of that the ambiguity out of it and just put some very specific times.
So if
the client comes up to you and says, we're not sure yet, this may or may not work, it's our best practice to at least put a time down. If you check your schedule later and find out that might not work, give us a call back and we'll work to reschedule it. But let's just get something on the calendar for now, so at least we have it. And in case it does work, you can just maintain that same meeting time.
So let me circle back to something you said a moment ago when you were talking about a process form or a feedback form. Now, I've heard advisors in the past talk about a seminar evaluation form. It sounds to me like you're talking about something different. It sounds to me like you're not about evaluating the seminar as much as the attendee is evaluating themselves or evaluating the process. Kind of share a little bit about your thoughts there as well.
Sure. So I think that the typical sort of old school evaluation form was more geared towards, tell me how I did as a presenter. Tell me what I can do to improve. Whereas if you're looking at more of my own personal process, you're engaging them in the process and engaging them in the seminar as it's going on. So we want you to be in tune, following along, ask the right questions, be engaged. If something comes up that, hey, maybe I didn't think of this in my current financial plan, or, maybe it's something that needs to be added, we want them to actively go in and circle it, underline, make some notes, and actively write that out. So again, they do feel like they're part of the seminar, and it turns into a better, more thorough, natural progression into the next step, which would be a personalized meeting with the advisor. So we've seen a lot more success taking that approach as opposed to, how did I do as a speaker? What did you think of the content? I mean, they already know what the content is. That's why they signed up for it. We want to know how it affects their personal lives.
So great. So start with the messaging in the meeting. Set the table for the client. Use a resource, a form, a feedback, not a feedback, a self-evaluation form. Correct myself there. You'll have to throw a dollar in the swear jar. And then strike while the iron's hot. Make sure that you have defined times. So or have your assistant there to start setting the appointments to, as you said, kind of work against and war against the law of diminishing intent, which is
Correct.
The farther away we get from a decision, the less likely it will keep it. If kind of to summarize the idea there. So all right. So great. So now this kind of brings us full circle. So the last part of the conversation we had while we were with these advisors was very interesting, and it kind of got my ears to perk up, was really around the nuanced elements of what about the people who don't show up?
Sure.
Or how about the people who show up but don't engage? What do we do there? Now, this is where, when you and I were talking before we got on this call, and before we decided to record, the idea of this is a very big missed opportunity. And what I saw was, we had a fairly good sized group of advisors in the room who've been doing these type of public events for years, but there was only a couple that actually kind of follow a process like what we're probably going to talk about now. And this is a big opportunity because this has a chance to impact your success rates and improve your success rates today, but also it has an opportunity to impact your future results. And so let's talk about the people who don't show up at all, or the people who show up but don't engage, because this was very interesting. I heard some advisors talking about what they do and how they address this audience. And it seemed like a lot of the other advisors weren't doing this, and there was a lot of notes being taken. So let's kind of talk about that.
Sure. So I want to start out with the attendees who maybe gave lower marks and didn't request an appointment. This is kind of a fine line because, as you mentioned at the very beginning, the advisors are putting a lot of time, energy, and money into this seminar. So they're trying to get as much as possible out of it. We've seen many advisors make the mistake of pestering and badgering too much in their follow-ups, calling them every day, emailing them every day. What didn't you like? Can you still come in for an appointment? What did I do wrong? We don't want to give off that air of desperation and being needy. Again,
don't chase, right? So
exactly right. Attract, don't chase. So in that scenario, what we typically recommend for advisors is to simply send a handwritten card afterwards and say, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, thanks again for attending the event on Social Security and taxation. We never take your time for granted. My hope is that you got an idea or two from the seminar that you found valuable, that you can apply to your current retirement process. If we can ever be a resource for you in the future, we'd love to have a follow-up conversation around the topics that we touched on. Feel free to reach out to us directly. All the best, Mr. and Mrs. Financial Advisor. You're acknowledging that you appreciated them coming. And it could be a matter of timing for them. It could be any number of things why they didn't book an appointment. They still might have interest. They still might have enjoyed your company and the information that was given. So it's important to, again, acknowledge it first of all, and then continue to maybe add them to your marketing drip campaign so you can touch on them, once a month, once every couple months, once a quarter, just to remind them that, hey, there are going to be future events. If you liked this one, if you enjoyed the topic, we're going to do another one on a variety of other topics that you might have some interest in as well. So it's important to keep them in your marketing ecosystem.
And so people who don't attend at all and people who do attend but don't sign up for an appointment, there's kind of two different paths you can take, right?
Right.
And so what was interesting kind of, and so kind of following along with what you shared there, that was the interesting thing is what I learned is it's a pretty cut and dry process. Look, you've spent the time, you spent the money, you've spent an hour of time with them, and they don't directly engage, but maybe, it's the timing's not right. I used to work with an advisor. He used to always say, you always want your music playing when the parade goes by, because you know what? Life is a matter of timing. Yeah. And so I love this approach. And, quite frankly, that's what one of the advisors in the room, or actually a couple, it echoed kind of what you talked about. They said, when they host an event, if someone doesn't sign up, a member of their team will actually physically pick up the phone and call. They'll call the people who attended but maybe didn't sign up for an appointment, and they use kind of the same messaging and scripting that you use. Hey, we're so happy that you were able to attend and share some time with us. Because acknowledge that the person on the other end was spending their time, their valuable time with you. We hope you learned something very valuable. We noticed that you didn't sign up for an appointment. If you are still interested in that, we do have some spots available. If not, we just hope that you did, receive some benefit from the time you spent with us. If you ever be of service, yada, yada, yada. And then we'll also be having some additional events in the future. So I love that process. What that advisor actually shared was, it's not uncommon for people to then raise their hand and say, you know what, maybe I do want to sign up, come in for an appointment. It was kind of on the fence that the timing wasn't right. And so this is a best practice that this advisor uses every single time. And they say it's a rare occasion that they don't get one or two or more people that go ahead and jump in and sign up for appointments. So that took got a lot of people's attention. The other piece to it too is what you said about putting them on your drip mail campaign. The attract, don't chase. We're not pestering them with phone calls. It's the idea of staying in front of them, right? Top of mind awareness, bringing value. You mentioned that earlier as well. Continuing to provide content that is valuable to them, because maybe something else, maybe the topic in that meeting wasn't exactly the thing that got them over the hump to engage, but maybe it's another topic. And then keeping them invited to other potential events. That was very interesting. There was a very contentious moment in the meeting where people were like, look, if I do dinner events or I do education, if I'm doing education, I'm not providing any food. Okay, great. Invite them to everyone. But when people are investing money also into dinner, the old plate liquor adage, right? Right. Why am I going to keep inviting those people? But what they found is there were people that it was just a matter of timing. Their timing just wasn't right. So there are some nuances here, but what I would take away from this, and what I think what you're sharing too, Alan, is don't solely focus on the people that engage for an appointment. Make sure that you do your due diligence and still take the steps for those people who raised their hand that said they wanted to come but didn't make it. Life happens, right? Sometimes, they could make it for whatever reason. So go ahead. Hey, look, if you like to attend, we know things come up. If you like to attend one of our other events, we'd love to get you on the calendar. Great. Or if you just like to come in and talk to us one-on-one, wonderful. And then for those who show up but maybe aren't ready to engage, it's that second offer opportunity. Again, the wording and messaging is important. Attract but don't chase. And then keep in front of them so that maybe when the timing is right. So I love this thought process. And what was very interesting, because since I was in attendance at this event with these other advisors, I've been anecdotally asking some of the other advisors I've been working with, and it seems like they all focus solely on the people that sign up, and some will put them on the drip email campaign, but for the most part, there is no follow-up phone call. There's no follow-up email. So there's a missed opportunity that could improve. Just think if you acquired one or two more clients from those extra steps, the value it can bring to your practice long term. So
tremendous value. Absolutely. And it's a great point.
So with that, any final thoughts today, Alan?
Really, it comes down to following the process. So create a defined process for all parts of your business, frankly, but especially for your seminars. We're going off of best practices that have worked previously for other advisors very well. So create the process for all parts of the seminar, pre-seminar, during the seminar, post-seminar, and stick with it. You'll be surprised at your results if you just kind of follow the bouncing ball and so follow in the footsteps of other successful advisors.
Great. Well, thank you again, Alan, for joining us today. If you like what you hear, like and subscribe. Follow along for more from the Rare Advisor. And with that, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
This information is for licensed financial professionals only and is not intended for use in soliciting sales from the public. The views expressed represent the opinions of the presenter or their featured guest, not necessarily those of USA Financial or its affiliated subsidiaries. Industry references are generic and not intended to represent actions or beliefs of any individual or entity. Content is only presented to illustrate general principles, beliefs, or ideas and should not be construed as legal or regulatory advice. Trademark and copyright protected. USA Financial and Affiliates.